The cyclone hits at 4:17 a.m. Sustained winds at 215 kilometers per HR tear corrugated roofing off 12,000 homes in the first 14 minutes. Rain falls at 312 millimeters per HR, horizontal spears that reduce visibility to arm. But wind and rain are not the killers here. The real weapon is what happens beneath the flooded streets. The city's 4 main canals, engineered by Dutch colonists in 1682, become death traps. Dissolved oxygen crashes from 6.8 mgl to 1.2 mgl within 9 hours. The lethal threshold is 2.0 milligrams per liter. Below that, gills seize, blood destabilizes, and fish suffocate slowly. Mouths gaping, bodies floating belly up in a gray-white carpet, stretching for kilometers. By dawn, 340 metric tons of tilapia, snakehead, and grass carp float motionless. The smell, ammonia, decay, raw sewage, is detectable from 800 meters. Rajadamri and Salem intersection, normally a 12-lane artery for 14,000 vehicles per H-hour, is now a river. Depth 3.8 meters, center current 4.2 meters per s-econd, enough to knock a 75-kilogram adult off their feet in 0.8 seconds and drag them 2 city blocks. You would expect people on rooftops. Instead, they stand in the current, waist deep, chest deep, holding kitchen knives tied to broom handles with electrical tape. They are hunting. The oxygen crash flushed apex predators into the streets. Arapaima, 63 kilograms of armored prehistoric muscle, glide through submerged traffic lights. Their 3mm scales, poker chip sized, flash under halogen lamps. When they thrash, tails generate 340 newtons, enough to shatter a rib cage. Kiat, 19. Scar across his left eyebrow from last monsoon's catch. Stands barefoot on a submerged Toyota Hilux hood. When a snakehead breaks surface 3 meters left, he moves, not fast. Fast means slipping. The blade, sharpened on concrete at 3 a.m., enters behind the gill plate. 62 kilograms of muscle goes rigid. He drags it to a traffic island where survivors work a factory line, spinal cord, gut, plastic wrap. The meat, 120 baht per kilogram, 3.40 US dollars, paid in damp, crumpled bills through fingers wrinkled from 18 hours in water. For hydration, they do not wait for aid trucks. They crack open coconuts floating past, 2.4 tons dislodged from a riverside warehouse, each containing 354 calories and 240 milliliters of electrolyte-rich fluid. The coconut water tastes of salt and diesel, but it keeps your kidneys working. It keeps you upright. It keeps you hunting. So tell me, if it were you, cyclone warnings blaring, 2.4 meters of water rising, 60-kilo predators at your traffic lights, would you cower on a rooftop praying for rescue, or wade down blade and fist to become apex predator of a drowned city? Think about it, because surface-level savagery is only the tip of the disaster iceberg. Above the waterline, it is blood-soaked survival. But when the current drags you beneath, there are no prey, only a crushing abyss dark enough to shatter steel. You hit the water at 8 degrees Celsius. Your diaphragm locks. Your chest seizes. Cold shock response. It does not give time to adapt. Within 8 seconds, heart rate rockets from 72 beats per MNU to 134. Blood pressure spikes to 180 over 110. Blood diverts from extremities to core. Fingers numb in 12 seconds. Fine motor control drops 60%. Grip strength fades to wet paper consistency. You trained for this at Navy Dive School in San Diego. Forced into 10 degrees Celsius water until your body overrides the gasp reflex. 4 minutes for the sympathetic nervous system to exhaust itself. For adrenaline to burn off. For control to return. Inside the Triton's pressure hull. 1.78 meter acrylic sphere, rated to 1,000 meters. The hatch seals with a hydraulic clang. The pilot, former NASA engineer Vance, 11 years building Mars re-entry shields, does not ask if you are okay. He knows. Hands you a chemical heat pack, turns to controls. Destination, 63 feet below Lake Shasta, Kennett, and 180-year-old Gold Rush Ghost, town submerged in 1945. when Shasta Dam trapped 1.3 million tons of fresh water. Vance's mission: map the town before sediment erases it. Your mission: do not die. Descent: 11 minutes. 4 electric thrusters, 12 kilowatts each. Navigate water 0.3% less buoyant than seawater. Freshwater density 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter, not 1025. The margin for error is slim. At 52 feet, sonar picks up an anomaly. Vance slows to 0.4 knots. Angles the forward lead array 24,000 lumens through 3 sapphire lenses. What comes through the viewport steals your breath. 12,000 preserved pine trunks rise from the lake bed, coated in 3 centimeters of brown diatomaceous slime. Drowned in 1945, their cellulose protected by anaerobic water, standing 12 to 18 meters tall, branchless, sharpened by current into needle points that can punch through acrylic. Then the leak. A single jet, 8.2 degrees Celsius, 42 psi, punches through the titanium seal above the aft battery compartment. Metallic hammer on steel sound, 1 drop every 2.3 seconds. Redundant everything, but redundancy needs time. At 63 feet, hydraulic rams at 2400 psi maintain depth. Battery at 34%, heating burned reserves. Time, a currency running out. Sonar resolves the contact, not the ghost town. Aluminum fragments, 2.1 meters. Curvature matching a Cessna 182's wing strut. Disappeared 1964, 4 passengers. Grainy image, fabric, bone. The question sits between you and Vance like a third passenger. Here is the choice. Visibility, 0, beyond the LED cone. Oxygen at 12 minutes, dropping. 63 feet down in 1.3 million tons of black water, staring at a blip that might be 60-year-old bones. Gamble your last air on truth, or claw back to surface and live with not knowing. What would you do? Because high-tech submarines still leak before the pitiless deep, but not everyone has a metal shell. In this drowned world, the most brutal battles play out at humanity's last defense, the dam. The Hirakud Dam in Odisha, India, was built in 1957 to tame the Mahanadi River. It stretches 25.8 kilometers across, creating a reservoir with a capacity of 5.8 billion cubic meters. During the monsoon of 2024, the dam reached 97.3% capacity. The engineers had a choice: let the structure fail and drown 1.2 million downstream, or open all 64 spillway gates and release 5.8 million cubic meters of water per hour. They chose survival for the many at the cost of chaos for the few. At the dam's eastern edge, where the concrete overflow lip measures just 0.3 meters thick, and the drop below is 28 meters of churning white water. That chaos has a name: the Scramble. The surface of the overflow lip is coated in a viscous black algae that thrives in the constant mist. Its coefficient of friction is 0.12, roughly equivalent to wet ice. The current speed at the edge measures 6.7 meters per second, sufficient to drag a 90-kilogram man over the lip in 0.4 seconds. If his footing fails, there is no railing, no safety line, no rescue protocol for what happens here, because what happens here is not supposed to happen. And yet, 200 meters downstream, you can see them. Barefoot, clothed in cotton that absorbs water until it weighs 2.3 times its dry mass, gripping rusted blades that have not seen a sharpening stone in 2 years. The fish coming over the dam edge are massive. Catla, the Indian major carp, normally a docile bottom feeder in the reservoir's depths, have been driven into a frenzy by the pressure differential and the sudden oxygen collapse. They hit the overflow lip, disoriented, spinning, weighing 65 to 73 kilograms each. Their bodies 1.2 meters long and 42 centimeters across at the widest point. In the calm water fish markets of Kolkata, this new market, a fish this size sells for 1,800 rupees per kilogram, roughly $22, destined for wedding feasts and upscale restaurants where it arrives on ice and climate-controlled trucks. Here, at the edge of a dam that could kill everyone present in a single structural sneeze, the same fish sells for 250 rupees per kilogram, $3. Cash on the spot, no refrigeration, No middlemen. Just survival arithmetic. 1970 kilo catch equals 280 rupees, which buys 28 kilograms of government-subsidized rice, enough to feed a family of 4 for 4 days. You watch a woman, 43 years old. The deep lines around her eyes suggesting she has done this before. Step onto the lip. Her feet are calloused to leather, toes splayed for grip. She carries a bamboo pole with a hand-forged iron hook at the end, the kind used for hauling irrigation pipes before the flood took her farm. A 68-kilo catla surges past her left ankle, silver flank flashing. She does not stab. She hooks. The iron catches behind the pectoral fin, and for one terrifying second, she is connected to 68 kilograms of panicked muscle by nothing more than a 2-meter bamboo stick and sheer will. Her feet slide 6 centimeters toward the edge. The algae screams under her soles. Then her son, 16, lean as rope, grabs her waistband and pulls. Together, they drag the fish onto concrete that is not designed to be stood on, in a place that is not designed to be fished during a disaster that is not designed to be survived. So tell me, your child has not eaten in 36 hours. The flood took your crops, your roof, your dignity. Now a 73-kilo fish flashes past the concrete lip. One catch feeds your family for 4 days. But the dam wall is slick with black algae. The drop is 28 meters of churning white death, and your only blade has not been sharpened in 2 years. Do you step to the edge, or do you watch the meal of a lifetime vanish into the foam? What would you do? Because whether it is barehanded snatching or dam line defense, humanity seems forever doomed to fight water with brute force. But what if fighting back is the mistake? What if the only code for survival is to let the flood swallow your streets? Babcock Ranch, Florida. 18,000 acres of land that developer Sid Kitson and his team purchased in 2006 for $100 million with a single question. What if you stopped fighting water and started collaborating with it? The town they built, 2,000 homes, 4,800 residents, has survived 4 Category 5 hurricanes in 8 years, including Hurricane Ian in 2022, which made landfall 16 miles to the west, with sustained winds of 155 miles per hour and a storm surge that swallowed the nearby town of Fort Myers to the tune of $3.2 billion in damage. Babcock Ranch damage bill, $0. Not because the water did not come, because they invited it. The system is called linked water bowls, 94 interconnected retention ponds with a combined capacity of 48 million gallons, arrayed across the development like the cells of a sponge. Each bowl is connected to the next by 6-inch concrete overflow weirs set at precisely calculated elevations. When rain falls, and during Ian, 14.2 inches fell in 12 hours, the water does not run downhill toward houses. It runs into the nearest bowl. When that bowl fills, it overflows into the next, and the next, following an engineered gradient that routes water through 74 miles of underground pipes, past homes built at 24 to 30 feet above sea level, and finally into the Gordon River at a controlled discharge rate that never exceeds 3.2 cubic meters per second. The roads, built at 22 to 24 feet elevation, 2 full feet below the homes, are designed to flood. They become rivers. They become sacrifice. The engineering is almost offensive in its simplicity. Every home sits on filled dirt brought in and compacted to 95% Proctor density, creating a 24-inch elevation advantage over the roads. The roads themselves are poured concrete with 1.5% camber, slope, directing water to 4-inch drainage channels that connect to the retention bowl network. The curbs are only 6 inches high, deliberately low, so that water overflows smoothly rather than pooling against foundations. Native landscaping, 2.3 million plants with root systems, extending 8 feet deep, absorbs 18 gallons of water per acre yard before any runoff even occurs. The power grid runs underground at a depth of 1.2 meters, protected from both wind and flood, fed by a 4.2 megawatt solar array that kept the water treatment plant operational even when the regional grid failed for 11 days. The cost, $100 million for water infrastructure alone, roughly $5,500 per H home. In Fort Myers, where traditional concrete seawalls and raised foundations failed catastrophically, the average homeowner faced $48,000 in flood repairs. Babcock Ranch's investment paid for itself in a single storm. But the math is not the radical part. The radical part is the philosophy. You do not defend against water. You give it somewhere to go. You sacrifice the roads so the homes survive. You accept 18 inches of flooding in your driveway so your bedroom stays dry. You trust that an engineer you will never meet calculated the bowl-to-bowl gradient correctly, that the weirs will not clog with debris, that the 3mm tolerance on every pipe joint was worth the $2.3 million in additional construction costs. You trust the math with your life. So here is the engineering question that breaks your brain. Every instinct screams, build higher walls, keep the water out. But Babcock Wrench proves the opposite. Invite it in, channel it, let it take the roads, the lawns, the parked cars. Trust that 24 inches of carefully calculated elevation is enough to save your sleeping children. Would you stake your family's lives on that math? Could you sleep through a Category 5 knowing the only thing between you and the Atlantic is a grassy bowl designed to flood? What would you do? Because perfect engineering protects the fortunate few, but storms always pass. When the water finally recedes, real life begins again in the mud-caked ruins. 72 hours after the cyclone passes, the water begins to recede. Not quickly. The ground is saturated to 2.4 meters, and gravity pulls the flood downward at 3 centimeters per hour. What remains looks less like a city and more like another planet. Morning air, 31 degrees Celsius, humidity, 94%. As the first sun hits waterlogged concrete, radiation fog forms, a ground-hugging cloud reducing visibility to 3 meters. The fog smells of wet ash, diesel, decomposing vegetation, and something sharper you do not want to identify. The mud varies from 8 to 15 inches deep. It is not ordinary mud. It is a composite of river silt, sewage from overwhelmed drains, pulverized construction material, and the organic slurry of 340 tons of dead fish breaking down in tropical heat. Walking through it produces a sucking sound, a wet, hungry gulp, and extracting your foot requires 40% more energy than dry pavement. Your boots gain 1.2 kilograms per kilometer walked. If you are barefoot, the mud dries into a cracking shell that itches and burns, washable only with soap and running water. 2 commodities most of the city has not seen in 3 days. At 6:47 a.m., the first 125cc motorcycles appear through the fog. They navigate submerged potholes by memory. Drivers who have ridden these roads since childhood know where asphalt drops 4 inches, where drainage grates lurk, which intersections become invisible traps after a flood. On the rear racks, banana leaf baskets hold fillets wrapped in plastic. The same storm caught fish, now priced at 180 rupees per kilogram, down from 250 because everyone has fish. The flooded market oversaturated with survival protein. A 9-year-old girl named Priya balances on an overturned oil drum, hanging catless strips on bamboo drying racks. Her grandfather lashed together from salvaged restaurant furniture. Her hands move with mechanical precision, more fish processed in 3 days than most children see in a lifetime. The cycle is brutal in its honesty. Catch the fish, sell the fish, buy rice, wait for the next flood, repeat. Just the fog, the motorcycles, and the fish moving from water to basket to market to pot. A survival circulatory system that does not need a disaster declaration. These people are not victims. They are participants in an economy older than concrete, older than dams. They adapt because adaptation is the only option that does not require permission. You have watched 5 stories unfold, 5 ways to survive when the water rises. The hunter who became predator on the flooded streets. The engineer who gambled truth against oxygen in the crushing dark. The mother who danced on a dam edge for $3 per kilogram. The town that learned the only winning move is to let the water win. And the survivors who rebuild in the mud because stopping is not on the menu. The next storm is already spinning on the Atlantic's far side. Meteorologists track a tropical depression 2,800 miles away with your city's name in its spiral. When it comes, not if, when, you will choose. In real time, with real water rising past your ankles, soaking your floorboards, testing the walls you thought would keep the world out. The water does not care about your categories. only gravity, pressure, and the path of least resistance. The question is whether you can be smarter than gravity, faster than pressure, whether you can become the path of least resistance yourself, survive by giving the flood what it wants, so it does not take what you need. This is your final choice. What do you do? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit subscribe. Turn on the bell, because the water is coming, and the only thing more dangerous than a flood is a survivor who was not ready to choose.